and welcome to Off the Fence, brought to you in association with Bet365. This is, of course, your weekly digital rundown of all things jump racing. And after last week's mammoth episode, we're back to just the 30 minutes today, but we still have a jam-packed show for you, loads to get through. I am joined, as always, by Tony Keenan and Barry Geraghty, but I'm not even going to introduce them properly or say hello to them. I'm just going to crack straight on with a look back on what happened where over the weekend, because there's plenty of little angles to cover and lots to talk about. And I'm going to start with Mcfabulous in the rescheduled Relkeel Hurdle. Now, this horse who was well punted to go and win, as he did in the end, but the ride caused a few controversial. Well, the ride was deemed as a little bit controversial, not maybe Harry Cobham's finest hour. Mcfabulous, it looks like he might swerve the Cheltenham Festival and head to Aintree instead. But Tony, what did you make of his performance, but also the ride that gained so much sort of traction on social media and whatnot?
Yeah, I hadn't seen that. I just read afterwards that Mick Fitzgerald had sort of had a little bit of criticism of him. Alright, just watching it live, I thought it was a strange one. They seem to be going a real good pace up front. 3 or 4 of them going at it from a long way out, and the jockey made a move to pull a bit wide 4 out. To me, I wasn't actually much concerned about the wide part at that point, as he was pressing into a hot pace. To me, it looked, if he had sat off it, they just would have come back to him. So that was an interesting part of the ride. I'd be interested in Barry's thoughts on that. I wouldn't be watching enough of Kempton now to know where typically horses would come, but maybe that near side is favoured on sort of ground is a little bit of cutting it. Maybe the ground is a little bit better, but to me, he probably gave him a little bit harder race than maybe he should have. He shaped a bit better than the form. I suppose there had been a slight concern coming back from the 3 mile race. Was it the trip that beat him, or was it the ability that beat him? And it does look like, based on this Kempton effort, that it was the trip that beat him. As you were saying there, Aintree seems to be optional. I just had a quick look there about horses. Like Paul Nicholls has run a few horses rated 150 plus in the Coral Cup, because I don't think he's going to get the Steers Hurdle trip. Maybe that would be at the very back of his head. None of them had really great success. Top of the game, finished second. And in general, horses rated 150 plus. I just had a quick look at this. They're 2 from 49 in the Coral Cup in recent years. So it is with 6 places. It's very hard to carry that type of weight. So no, but I was just interested in Barry's thoughts kind of about the track craft of it. Like, would going wide make sense there? To me, the pace part of it didn't anyway.
Going wide down the back wouldn't usually, but in the home straight, definitely it's often better wider. But Harry got competitive going to 3 out, and it's that part of the race where you bunched. And although there was only 7 runners, they were tightly packed. He was in that position the whole way through the race. He was towards the outside, albeit dropped in. So when he's going to go forward, he didn't have the option to go in because there was too much traffic there. So he had to stay wide and go wide. But I suppose if I was to do it, I would be happy to sit and follow the tree into the straight and go from there. But I'd say his instructions were different. He was coming back in trip, and I'd say Paul was keen to make use of him in that position and make it a test of stamina. So he was probably riding to instructions too, to be going forward. And just with the congestion at that point of the race, it left him wide. It left him wide going into the bend, but actually halfway around the bend, he's only 3 off the rail. He's on the better ground. So it didn't affect him, and I don't think it made any difference at all. Going down the back straight, being pushed wide like that isn't ideal, but I think he got into a good position in the end. And when you have so much horse like that, you have the option, and you probably have too many options. Whereas if you aren't travelling as strongly, you think, right, well, I'm going to just sit, follow the lads in and have a go later, and you play more of a canning race if you want. But when you have loads of horse and you're told to go forward, you probably do what you're told. So I'd say partly to instructions, coming back and trip, it unfolded that way with congestion and traffic. But I wouldn't have thought it was a bad ride by Harry, and he wouldn't have been the first one, and I would have been caught wide enough there on certain times myself over the years. Just
one follow up on that, Barry. You don't see a ride like that too often in Ireland. Could you comment on that?
Oh, definitely not, but it's a different style. Paul Nicholls would be very strong in his instructions. Be positive. My horse is stay, my horse is fit. That's generally how he likes his horse to be ridden. There's a different mindset in Ireland. It's very much, play your cards late with the majority of trainers, and you will get a chewing. As we mentioned in the show last week, Michael O'Brien, when I kicked on in Essex and won the Pierce Hurdle, He didn't speak to me afterwards. So it's a different mindset in Ireland. You play your cards late. That's how it is. Where in England, they love to do it from the front, go hard, carried out in your shield, all that crack. That's the style of racing. And that true run pace, the strong pace of races, that's how it is. And that's what the English owner, English trainer, English press, they love it that way. And I don't think Harry did much wrong. I think it unfolded a little bit for him at the third last and into the bend. But no, he didn't. For me, he didn't do an awful lot wrong.
Would you be in for an absolute bollocking from someone like Paul Nicholls if you get beat finishing well rather than get beat slowing down at the line? Is that basically the bottom line? Definitely,
but you would have that with a lot of English trainers.
Right.
I've ridden.
I didn't really realise that. As much as you're making it out.
I've ridden winners for Nicky, and Nicky wouldn't give you a bollocking for it, but you've won and won, but you played him late. You'd be going, oh, I was worried, just not able just to relax and watch and roll with it. And Paul,
we don't have the same bottle as you Irish guys.
It's what you're used to and what you grow up with, and the press love it too. And the press love the horse going from the front and going hard. Everyone latches on to the front runner. And if it happens to be grey as well, they'll love it twice as much.
So true. On that note then, we can move on to the Silvianaco Conti chase, where of course we were very excited to see Imperial Aura back in action there. Prior to the race was joint favourite for the Ryanair with Min, which given what they've both done was a little bit surprising, but another thing that the press love and the Brits love is an improving type rather than a proven performer, and so we'd all slightly latched on to Imperial Aura, but of course he unseated at the second fence, Barry, and I know this is a horse who you were so impressed with last time out with his jumping, and then it was such a shame that it was just one really bad mistake, it all obviously went out the window basically.
It did, but I wouldn't read into it too much either. Kempton's a very different track from Ascot and a very different track from Cheltenham, where it's flat, and he just guessed at the fence. He was probably going a little bit quick. As I say, it's a flat track and it lends itself to speed, and for whatever reason he just guessed. He made a bad mistake. He gave David no chance, but I wouldn't worry about that. He's plenty of time. He could go for the Ascot chase on the 20th of February. Would be an option for him, but he has plenty of time between here and then if Kim can find something for him. But I wouldn't read too much in it, but I'd still have Min ahead of him.
Yeah, I mean, he's now 7-1 Imperial Aura for the Ryanair with Bet365, so that's probably a much fairer price really. It's probably just levelled out his price a touch. Let's talk about the winner, Master Tommy Tucker, who's, of course, jumping has, it's a heart in your mouth sort of stuff with him. Barry, tell us what it's like to ride a horse like that. I mean, it's been well covered that they have to sort of keep this very strong contact down the rein and into the bit, into every fence with him. And Harry's obviously got a real niche way of riding him. But of course, when you're coming down to the last, like he did at Kempton, and you're asking for one, and then he does that, how do you ride a horse who can just put in such a howler like that?
As quietly as you can, but it's down to what the fellas around you are doing, or the girls for that matter, but it's your opposition. If they're taking you on, they're going to set him alight. He attacks his fences, so he's running at every fence and he wants to go forward, he wants to attack. So if you have something pressing you, that's going to make him go faster, and that's going to make the mistake or fall more likely. So through the most part of the race, he was actually getting an easy time of it, and he was still rapid and low, and he jumped some fences really well, and he jumped okay too, but he was rapid at a good few and low. But in the straight, when Harry gave him a squeeze down over the second last, the horse naturally opened up, and then when he gave him another squeeze at the last, he guessed at it, but he's hit the deck a few times and he's learned how to survive. So he's got a little bit of self-respect there, but he doesn't have much of it through the race, and I'd fear for him in a competitive race when there's something stuck up his tail, annoying him and pressing him. That's when he could pay the price again. So he's a hairy ride. He's not, they would have said not a married man's ride.
Tell me, if you're Harry Cobden and you're 23, take yourself back, Barry Geraghty, to when you were 23, would you have looked forward to the challenge of a horse like Master Tommy Tucker, or would you have been like, God damn it, it's Master Tommy Tucker day again?
No, you'd go for it. Still, and I still would have done a year ago. Because he is a good horse. If you're going out and Master Tommy Tucker, who was rated 105 and was no good, you'd be going, oh, not this thing again. But no, Master Tommy Tucker in a Grade 2 around Kempton, probably at a short price, or a reasonably short price, I'd take him.
Fair enough. And so we're looking at the prices for him then. He's a 25 to 1 shot with Bet365 now for the Ryanair and a 50 to 1 shot for the Gold Cup. And that's pretty much down to, well, basically what you've just talked about, Barry, isn't it? That his jumping, I think everyone fears his jumping will let him down in a hot pot race like that at the festival, right?
Yeah, and it's probably part of the reason why Paul mentioned afterwards that the Melling Chase is an option for him. So that's one that's been considered maybe more than Cheltenham, but he has plenty of time to change his mind and decide to go for the Ryanair. But I'd imagine if he lined up in the Ryanair with all that's in it, as competitive as it is, or the Gold Cup for that matter, he wouldn't be carrying my fiver anyway.
Yeah, fair enough. Right, viewers, we want to hear from you on all the topics just discussed. Master Tommy Tucker, Imperial Aura, do you still fancy him for the Ryanair? Do you think 7 to 1's now a fair price for Imperial Aura? Would you like to see him run again before the Cheltenham Festival? I personally would. And Mcfabulous, what do you make of him? Do you want to see him in the World Hurdle, another try over the Stayers trip, or would you prefer that he head straight to Aintree? Get involved. Comments, retweets, likes, you know the drill. Just get in contact with us. Ask us the questions. We read them all. Let's move straight on then, and I'm going to stick with you, Barry, because we're sticking in the UK. We're going to head over to the rescheduled Dipper Chase, where we saw Messier De Zobo, who's now 14 to 1 shot for the Marsh Novices Chase, because Alan King and Daryl Jacobs teamed up with this horse. He's just a what would have been horse, isn't he? I mean, that 1,000 plus days off the track, and he's a Grade 1 winner over hurdles, and now he can do that over fences. It's just the whole time I'm thinking with him, what could have been.
Oh, definitely, but he's still what could be as well. He showed a good level of form. It was a good performance. He did everything nicely. He travelled, he crept, he jumped brilliantly. It was fairly faultless. He beat Protect the Rat, who's probably maybe had a little bit of an elevated mark from his win against Southfield Stone in Cheltenham. So maybe he isn't as strong as maybe he was taught of, but it was a good performance by the winner. I suppose Lieutenant Rocco being so close to him throws a question mark on it, on the form maybe. But in their defence to that, I would say when Canton being such a flat track, a good horse doesn't get away from a lesser horse as easy as you would in a Cheltenham or a Chepstow or someplace where the good horse gets to excel. So I think it was a good performance, and he's definitely worth considering.
And yeah, I mean, he's 14 to 1, and obviously we've got such a short price favourite at the top of that market, the Marsh Novices Chase market I'm talking about with Envoi Allen. But they've all got to get there, and this is a Grade 1 performance. So for me, he's, I don't know, he's probably a fair enough price, to be honest with you. Barry, just a quick word for Daryl Jacob, actually, whilst we're on the topic, because a 5-timer for him, he's a jockey who, I think, I know that, like, this is such a cliche, and I almost hate myself for saying it, but no one says a bad word about Daryl Jacob at any time ever. I never hear a bad word against him, and he's been through some highs and lows in his career, but a 5-timer, and now of course he's got his retained, well, he's had his Isaac the Suede sort of ownership connection for a long time now, but he's really rocking and rolling, and he's 5-timer on the day is pretty special, isn't it?
No, it's brilliant. I'm obviously riding brilliantly, but he's in a great position riding for Isaac and Simon. 2 really good owners. They have him, they have his back everywhere, and they trust him and believe him, and he's got great confidence from that, and he's riding brilliantly as a result. But he had a brilliant day on Saturday, 5 winners. I know Jackson's Hill in the last was well celebrated, but I rode plenty of 4-timers in my time, but I never rode 5, so he's definitely one up on me there. But it was a great performance by him, and I was delighted for him. As you say, he's a lovely fella. He's a real grafter. He's had his ups, he's had his downs, but he's he works away, and he's getting his results.
Yeah, brilliant. I don't think anyone would take that away from him. Let's head over to Chepstow, because of course not only was it the Welsh Grand National, but it was, well, the rescheduled meeting, and of course we saw the Grade 1 finale hurdle, which has thrown up some very decent winners in the past. I was really looking forward to it. Adagio for the David Pipe team, Tom Scudewall wins it. Tony, interesting to take your take on this, because of course this horse got the crossover form with the Irish as well, and basically in terms of the juveniles and the Triumph Hurdle, it feels like the Irish have one over on us big style at this stage. That's not taking away from the performance of Adagio at the weekend, but just as an overall view, that's what I fear.
Yeah, well, Adagio, I suppose, has been well placed to win his few races and that. I thought he showed quite a good attitude on Saturday, finished out the race very strongly. Gary Moore's horse that was second had been a bit keen. Didn't help himself. But the takeaway from it, of course, is that Gordon Elliott's duffel coat has beaten Adagio well, giving him weight back in November. And I don't even think the duffel coat would be in maybe Gordon Elliott's top 3. I think it's probably not unreasonable to say that. Like Xanahere's better, Quixilios is better, and the filly that won Punchestown on Rivière d'Etel, I think, on New Year's Eve is probably better as well. But I think the most significant thing for the Triumph Hurdle, and also as regards the English challenge for the Triumph Hurdle, Paul Nicholls is suggesting that his good horse, whose name escapes me, the horse that runs in the What a Friend colours, is potentially going to go to entry as well. So that was a little bit of a surprise. But to me, the most impactful thing that happened with regard to Triumph in the last week is that Willie Mullins is after taking over French Cecile from Elmarie Holden.
Yes.
Very interesting news. Now, obviously, this is massive positive for the horse long term, I would say. But I would have a little bit of a question what it means in the short term. Again, I'll just give you a few stats here. Like Willie Mullins, obviously, horses switching to his yard have an excellent record, an excellent strike rate. I think he's like, now this does not include French horses, unfortunately, but 30% strike rate first time back with a 54% place strike rate just off the switch. That's overall. Now, horses running back though within 2 months, which is basically what French Cecile is going to almost certainly have to do to maybe run a Dublin Racing Festival, or a little bit more if he's going to stay at Cheltenham. They're only 1 from 13 at hitting about 7.5% with a 38% strike rate. So they're way lower. Now, if you push it out to 3 and 4 months, it does become higher, and that's a very small sample that I'm talking about there. It's only 13 horses that he's done it with recently. And actually, the one exception, there was only one horse that won it, was Annie Power. So she's a fairly exceptional horse. And actually, he's even looking deeper into it, he's actually only run a horse back twice since 2012 that he acquired of another yard within 2 months. They've just stopped doing this. And I actually know, I saw or listened to Patrick Mullins mention this recently. I think he was talking about their other horse for possibly the Triumph, the Saint Sam. I think he was talking about him ahead of Fairyhouse. He said, I think he'd been off for like 134 days. And he says, not really sure about that. He says, that's a bit close now. We'd like to give them a little bit more time to bed in. So it'll just be interesting to see how that unfolds. Like, that horse ran to a very high level first time up for the Holdens. Obviously, Willie Mullins, you would almost be certain that he will improve it, but I wonder, will he improve it within this little time window? And he's going to be short wherever he runs. I think he's the second favourite for the Triumph at the minute. So just interesting to see how that develops if it does run back quickly at the Dublin Racing Festival.
Oh, that is very interesting, isn't it? Very interesting indeed, because no doubt is a very high class performer. But essentially the Irish look to have a handle on the Triumph Hurdle, and Adagio is now 9-1 with Bet365 for that race. But like Tony says, you can name a clutch of horses who just over an island alone have a better chance on what we've seen so far. Barry, let's talk about the Welsh National, because Adam Wedge looked to basically have, is that pretty much a dream spin in a Welsh National, what he got off Secret Reprieve?
Oh, definitely. He travelled beautifully, he jumped beautifully. It was a school for him. It was so easy for him. Got to the front and only did as much as he needed to do from the last, but he was a good winner going to the last, and then he just lost a little bit. So no, it was rock solid. He's a lovely progressive type. Obviously he was £8 well in, but still he won with a bit in hand, and he's only had 6 runs. There's only a 6 run over fences, so he's open to improvement as well. So no, he is a gorgeous type, and it was a lovely ride by Adam. He did everything right, but the horse did everything right from as well too.
Yeah, I mean, the price he went off, the way he travelled, his position through the race, and then the way he jumped, and then the way he galloped through the line. It's not often a race like a Welsh National goes as perfectly as that, basically. Barry, would you be interested with him in a National Hunt Chase at the festival? I mean, he's still a novice, and the extended trip round there, he's 14-1 at the moment with Bet365 for that race, and obviously everyone's talking about him as a Grand National horse. But in the meantime, this season, would that interest you at all?
Oh, definitely. But for me, it'd be a choice between one or the other. He's only 7-year-old, so if you did 4 miles in Cheltenham, you wouldn't want to be going 4.5 in Aintree. So I'd take me pick and go for which one you fancy most. And I suppose you'd have to go for the National over the 4 miler. But if he did go for the 4 miler, you know, with the way he is progressing, his experience too, that counts for an awful lot, just to have that handicap experience stepping into a race like that in Cheltenham. So no, he's definitely he's a big player wherever he goes, but you know, probably with his age profile and his experience level, albeit he's got a nice mark if he gets into the national, he's not the most experienced, and it does count for a lot, even more so, as I say, around Aintree than Cheltenham. So he'd be a good ride either place. I'd go for the national, but he would still be a novice in the national.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'd almost be tempted to go for the National Hunt Chase just on and then save the national for next year maybe. But anyway, what do you guys think? As viewers, what do you think? Let us know, get involved. And in terms of your questions, it is now time for exactly that. It is question time. And it's straight back to you, Barry, because Silver Walnut, yes, has asked if Barry could come back and ride one JP horse at the upcoming festival, which one would you choose?
Not straightforward. Epitant would be the obvious one, but I'd love to see how Deffy gets on in the Clarence House. He's the one I enjoyed riding over fences over the last couple of years more than anything. So if Deffy came back to his form, which I think he's very capable of coming back to in the Clarence House, I'd love to line up with him in the Champion Chase, but I'd be happy to ride Epitant otherwise.
Oh, I think people think the Deffy shout is a bit left field. I love your love for him. Terrace Longdon has asked if the Irish trainers, this is a great question, and we actually have to focus on this, and we're going to go around the three of us. Terence has asked, if the Irish trainers are all limited to a maximum of 10 horses at Cheltenham, I know many would be less than 10, but which 10 would Mullins and Elliott bring? So I think the way we're going to do this is we'll start with Mullins and we'll all name a horse. Now, just purely because I love him, I wouldn't be leaving Monkfish off the ferry, basically. So he's mine. Tony, what about you? Well, someone needs to be writing these down.
Well, I'd say
I'll do that.
I'd say there might be a few quick transfers to Tony Mullins and Tom Mullins, maybe as the thing went along. but anyway, I'll go with the most obvious one. Alboom Photo would have to be next.
Okay, Barry.
Yeah, I'd go Appreciate It.
Okay, those are some pretty obvious ones in there. I'm going to go left field next, actually. And I want the horse in the bumper, Ramillies, the one that won at Leopardstown. I'd like him in the bumper. I know it's controversial, he's a big price, but I absolutely love this horse. So you guys won't want him on the ferry, but he's on my ferry and I've put him in there, so happy at that, basically. Over to you, Tony.
Okay, well that's ruled out me putting one in the bumper, and I suppose Min would be the next one that obviously would have to go in.
Okay, Min for you. What about you, Barry?
I'd go Chacun Poussoir.
Oh yeah, that makes much more sense, guys. I would go. Well, now you see, this is controversial because I'd want Mellon on there as well. But where's he going to run? And would you put him in there? Obviously, he's got to take on one of them. Oh God, this is. Tony, what should I do?
We're going to have to start placating a few owners here, I think. So, who of his big owners hasn't got a horse in yet? It'd be one maybe I'd be looking at. Where did we see?
Okay, well, I've put Mellon. I've put Mellon in there.
You've put Mellon in. That's fine. Okay. Well, I will put in. Willie always likes a kind of a nice obvious one. For the Mayor's Novice Hurdle. Kenny Alexander's horse Galwaz.
Okay, hang on. And Barry, who are you going?
Well, if we're talking big owners, I go for my former boss. I couldn't leave St. Ray at home after winning there last year. My last winner, actually, so I'd have to bring him.
Oh, jeez, that's only taking up a space. Come on, Barry. Jesus, we have to try and get winners here. Playing.
I'd still wouldn't rule him out.
Really? Okay. Well, let's move on to Gordon's horses then.
I think we need one more, Vanessa. You top it off there.
Oh God, I feel like this is risky asking me to top it off. What the hell has he got in the Albert Bartlett or anything? Or a handicap? We haven't even looked at a handicap. This is very stressful.
Well, you could have, for those novice hurdlers, you could have Statler or Gaillard de Menil or Blue Lord, something like that maybe. Or you could have an Erg, you mean, for a novice chase.
I like the big getaway for the 4 miler.
Oh,
That'll
yes, that's a good shout. Yeah, that's a good shout. Okay. Right, okay, well, we'll move on to Gordon, and I'll take the obvious one. I'll go Envoi Allen, thank you very much. Well, come on now. That,
Can I be obvious? Can I be next and go obvious with Zana here?
You can. I'll be Captain Obvious too, so Gerhard has to be next.
One to take on my lively outsider in the bumper. Okay, and then we will go... Oh God, this is... I mean, you guys are going to think this is terrible, but I want Messier De Zobo and I want him to line up in the World Hurdle. Is that controversial?
I'm happy with that. I don't need to
Tony's
perform.
not,
No. I think you have to play politics a bit. They both definitely have to have a JP horse anyway, and Messier De Zobo has as good a chance as any. Speaking of an owner who has become quite big with Gordon, I think pencil full of lead there for Rob Corr. You could put him in. I think he has a chance in an RSA or even a 4-miler if he's heading that way. I think that has us at 5.
I think Abracadabras, you'd have to include him after his dirty scope at Christmas.
Who did you say, sorry, Tony, before that? I was busy looking at the thing.
Pencil full of lead.
Oh yeah, pencil full of lead. Okay, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we've got 6 for Gordon. We're missing so many good ones here. I mean, is Tiger Roll going to go for the cross country?
They said he could retire after the cross country. Michael O'Leary has been saying.
I mean, we can't leave him at home, can we?
No, definitely not.
So Tiger Roll is on the fun bus, so that's good news. Would Battle Over Doyen go for a handicap? That's a controversial option, but it's just a horse that I keep putting the faith in.
I'd say he'd be better treated. I'd say he'd be better treated in a graded race rather than a handicap. He's going to be well top for handicap, you'd imagine. So maybe he could have an outside chance in a Ryanair.
No, let's leave him off the fun bus. Tony, who else do you want, please?
Yeah,
Gordon's.
This is very left field, but I put him up as tracker horse a few weeks ago. Percy Warner. I want him on. He runs.
Percy Warner.
He's already run today now, so he could have made me look like an idiot or a genius. We'll see.
Okay. Who else do we want for Gordon?
Well, if we're talking handicaps,
like we're really...
if we're talking handicaps,
yeah, well,
Far Class could be worth considering for the Kim Muir. He ran well in Leopardstown, off a slow pace, and he'd obviously hit a Jamie Codd on board.
He's been around for so long. Okay, he's in. That must be. Is that us done with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. One more, please, Tony.
Do we leave Delta work at home?
Oh God, no! Right. God, I'm A, terrible at this game, but also B, I'd be terrible at making rash choices here. So do you want the list, boys? And then you can choose which team you'd be on. How about that? Right, Willie Mullins has got Monkfish, Album Photo, Appreciate It, Ramillies Min, Chacun Pour Soi, Melon, Galois, Saint Roy, and The Big Getaway. Pretty decent team. I feel like Tony might want to sub something out of that. Gordon has got Zanahir, Envoi Allen, Gerhard, Messier De Zobo, Abracadabras, Pencil Full of Lead, Tiger Roll, Percy Warner, Far Class, and Delta Work. Barry, off the fence, whose team would you rather be on?
Well, if you're going grade ones, you'd have to be on Willie's team.
Yeah. Tony?
1 to 5 Willie, 7 to 2 Gordon.
Yeah, God.
So I'm sorry, that's the way it is.
Yeah, you're right.
Although last year Gordon did manage to pull more than a few rabbits out of the hat in the handicaps. That's where the bulk of his success did come. So.
Okay, well, that was a fun game, and God, it's just lots of food for thought, to be honest with you. And on that note, we are actually running out of time, but that was well worth spending a bit of time on. I enjoyed that. So we're going to rock straight on to, well, we want more viewers' questions for next week, please. More stuff like that, left field ones. It's good fun. We enjoy them. Anything you want to ask Tony, it doesn't even have to be anything to do with a festival or horses that have run in the last week. It doesn't matter. We want to hear from you. Any question you like. We're going to move on. Quick word with you, Tony, because we're going to move on to our offence section. Trimmel and the distance chat. Simon Rowlands has done this brilliant blog, and there's been a bit of feedback. What's your view on this, and what's happening over in Ireland with your distances?
Yeah, look, I've been handed this hot potato, and I'm coming at it's probably a cold potato at this stage. So after the event, look, it's all very disappointing, and they need to kind of get it sorted, really. I suppose the fact that maybe the comments are coming from the UK is maybe irritating them a little bit. That's completely irrelevant. This is this Irish attitude. It'll be grand, and it's not grand. It's not good enough on a number of levels. I suppose the Irish racing apparatus management of it, the HRA promised sectional times, whatever, 3, 4, 5 years ago. Now, obviously, the IHRB are separate to that, but they've basically thumbed their nose at that and said times and distance and all this stuff doesn't matter, which of course it does. On a very basic level, like Simon Rowlands writes these really interesting pieces for At the Races for other publications where it's just highly engaging stuff. I read them, I learn something about them all the time, only speaking on a personal level. To me, they do bring people's fans into the sport and develop their interest and helps you understand what really happened in the race. But to me, his broader point is more significant. It's kind of the attitude that if you can't trust them to get the distances right, can you trust them to get things like integrity right? Can you trust them to get things like drug testing right? I think that's a perfectly reasonable question to ask. And the other broader issue, I suppose, is coming up here is just this whole idea of information provision. And I realise not everyone is into times, or not everyone is into sections, not everyone is into speed figures, or whatever the case would be. That's totally fine. But you mightn't be into that, but you might be into accurate going descriptions, or you might be interested in finding out, stewards' reports where they're asking excuses, like is there a meaningful reason why this horse underperformed? It's not just about saying, I don't like times, I don't really want to know about that. It's the broader scope of how they're going to provide information about the sport. And sometimes you hear people say, why are these people asking for that, trying to do away with their edge on betting marks? And I just don't really get that. I just want to know all the information, or at least as much as the information as I can possibly have, and then I'll decide what I'm going to use. Like, there'll be 3 or 4 factors I don't want anything to do with that other people might think are absolutely vital to sorting out a race. But yeah, to me it was just quite dispiriting.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that one, to be honest. I think in this day and age, if you can't get a race distance right, a going description right, I know it's not an exact, well, actually the race distance is literally an exact science. But I know the going is trickier or whatever, but I think given the comparison to other sports, I always look at our sport compared to other sports, and we are so far behind in so many areas, and we could do so much better. We could actually help ourselves, and in the digital era we're in now, information is key. So we've got to start getting that right a bit more. But anyway, Tony, I'm going to stick with you because we are running out of time. But a very quick preview, please, of the rescheduled Lawless Novice as at the weekend. We've got Bob Ollinger in there, and Ashdale Brob and Cross Hill. What's your view? Has it? Where are you landing on this now?
I had a little bit look at it earlier on. I think it's a little bit more competitive than the betting would suggest. I think there are a few horses at prices there that may be able to make a race of it with some of these fancied ones. I would have a little bit of a concern with Bob Ollinger. Is he going to be a bit more of a 2-miler? I think Blue Lord might be a 2-miler also. Cross Hill is one that might be worth a second chance, as if he's run terribly the last time in Punchestown behind Power of Pause. He hasn't run terribly. I think the trip's too sharp. He's over-raced a bit. He's over-raced quite a bit actually, and he's still come out the best horse at the weights. I think he could be a different horse back up and trip. And I also think Flanking Manoeuvre, not totally in love with him running him back so quick, but he was so visually impressive the last day that maybe he'd be able to overcome it. I think Noel Meek could probably do it looking after him a bit more, to be honest, giving him a little bit of a break. Like, it is only 10 days after he won in Fairyhouse, and you never know what it's after taking out of him. But yeah, I thought both of those were a little bit overpriced.
Okay, we'll take that on board for sure. We'll look forward to that the weekend. It's one of the good races, Grade 1. We'll look forward to that. that's about it for the show. We're just going to do our tracker horses very quickly. My tracker horse for this week isn't actually a horse that ran this week. It's Fantasticus for the Nigel Twiston-Davies team. Now, the reason I've picked this horse is because his novice hurdling form had a huge boost this week with Barbados Bucks and Witness Protection. Barbados Bucks won at Kempton and Witness Protection won at Chepstow. And those are the two horses that have beaten Fantasticus in the past in his 2 starts so far over hurdles, and he has a lovely little handicap mark of 122, which I don't think Nigel Twiston-Davies is going to let go of anytime soon. And so when we next see him, I'll be looking forward to seeing him. Barry, your tracker horse, please.
I'm sticking with the Nigel Twiston-Davies camp as well. The horse I gave him the Welsh National last week, so the Hollow Ginge, who had offered 50 to 1, but obviously no one else had the same opinion as me, but he was travelling well beside the winner halfway down the back when he made a bad mistake and unseated. So I think he's worth another look, and maybe, I'm not sure where he'll go, but you'd imagine he'd be in a stay-in handicap somewhere along the way. Maybe he'll have to wait for the Midlands National in New Toxteth or something, but he's one to keep an eye on.
Nice. I mean, my Welsh National horse, Springfield Fox, will not be in my tracker again anytime soon. Less said about that, the better. Tony, your tracker horse, please.
Well, I like the fact that both of you are playing the long game here, waiting for a yard to come back into form. That might have happened, I don't know, maybe in April. Anyway, I'm kind of struggling a little bit this week like you, Vanessa. I'm going to have to go back because we had no racing in Ireland over the weekend. I did a piece on the website there, 10 kind of interesting horses from over Christmas. The number 11 on the list who didn't make the cut was a horse called Malor All-Star, belonging to the Sweeneys. They obviously thought a bit of this horse. They ran him in the Champion Bumper last year. He didn't run great. He was sort of rear in midfield, but he did chip well behind Statler in the maiden hurdle at Leopardstown on the 29th of December. He was dropped out the back, and we know really that horses dropped out in Irish maiden hurdles don't really win. But he made a lot of ground, from the back straight, finished off quite well. I'd be thinking definitely a country maiden hurdle wouldn't be beyond him. I would expect him to improve quite a bit on that run, his first since Cheltenham.
Right, in the track we go. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, boys. We've rattled through that. I thought it was going to be quite a quiet week, and of course we've gone way over time, and we could have carried on talking for a lot longer. But thank you very much, as always, Tony Keenan and Barry Geraghty, much appreciated. And on that basis, I'm signing off for another week of Off the Fence. As always, give us a retweet, give us a like if you like the show, that is. Get in touch, let us know what you think. Answer some of our questions we've thrown out to you and give us some questions back. We want to hear it all. But thanks very much for watching. That was this week's episode of Off the Fence.